This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hey, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over variable speed pumps, specifically for very large pools and very small pools or older pools. And I'm going to go over the differences and which way you should go with the variable speed pump and why you should pick one pump over another based on your pool size and age. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I'll start with the rule of thumb when you're going with the variable speed pump, and that is you want to match the total horsepower of the current pump within reasonable range of that horsepower. For example, if you have a 1.5 horsepower standard speed pump, you can get away with a 1.65, 1.85, 2 horsepower VS pump. You can even go up to a 2.7, but that's somewhat overkill in a lot of cases. But since you can run these at different speeds, it doesn't really matter the total horsepower of the VS pump. When you're comparing it to your standard pump, you just kind of waste money if you go too big on the variable speed pump when you don't need to. So the rule of thumb is if you have a 1 horsepower single speed pump, going with a 1.5 total horsepower VS pump or 1 horsepower VS pump or 1.65 is perfectly fine. You wouldn't want to go from a 1 horsepower standard regular pump to a 2.7 or 3 total horsepower. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So let me just start with the smaller pools or the older pools. They're kind of like in the same category. If you have a pool with 1.5 inch plumbing, there's really no need to get a 3 total horsepower VS pump because chances are that pool is running off of a 110, 115 volt breaker, and there's no need to go to a 3 horsepower VS pump. Now, a lot of these, of course, are dual voltage, so they'll automatically modulate the voltage based on the way you wire it. So if you have 115 volt wiring, you put it in to the pump in the back, load 1 and load 2. It'll, of course, even if it goes up to 230 volts, it'll just modulate it down to that voltage. And it's one of those things where a lot of people don't understand this, but if you had let's say a 2.7 horsepower, Pentair SuperFlo or a 2.7 horsepower Jandy Flow Pro, or even a 3 horsepower IntelliFlow pump, if you're wiring it to 115 volts, it's going to modulate that total horsepower down to match that voltage. You're not going to get the total 3 horsepower out of that pump. You're going to get maybe 1.6 or 1.5 total horsepower no matter what you do because there's not enough voltage to get that pump to go to the full 3 horsepower. It's kind of like if you had a standard single speed pump, 1 horsepower, you couldn't put in a 2 horsepower or a 2.5 horsepower or even a 1.5 horsepower motor pump in there because those require the 230 volts to operate. So the same concept when you have a variable speed pump with dual voltage, it'll definitely go down to the voltage, the lower voltage, but it's not going to give you the same total horsepower. 3 horsepower is not going to be reached at that point because of the voltage, if that makes sense. So you're just wasting your money basically by buying that larger VS pump that you don't need. Also, if you have 1.5-inch return lines in your pool, or even suction lines, both suction and return lines, you really can't utilize the full potential of a 2.7 horsepower VS pump. So don't even bother getting one because there's just way too much power for the size plumbing that you have in your pool. I would say the largest you can probably get is a 1.65 total horsepower VS pump. And again, you're modulating these horsepowers or the RPMs in the programming anyway, and there's no need to have a really large horsepower pump on smaller plumbing. And an older pool will work perfectly fine with the smaller horsepower pump. You also don't need to worry too much about water features and things like that on these older pools. They don't have much there. If you have a very simple pool, you can use a lower total horsepower VS pump without any issues at all. You want to match what you have on your system or close to what you have on your system when you go to a VS pump. You don't want to overdo it because bigger isn't always better in a lot of circumstances. I should also mention that you don't want to kind of reverse this equation. So if you have a 2 horsepower single speed pump or 1.5 horsepower single speed pump, you don't want to go to a 1 total horsepower variable speed pump. You are sacrificing some horsepower at that point. Now, you're not going to probably notice too much of it, even with like a attached spa with the jets, but you may notice it with water features, and you may not get as much energy efficiency out of it by going to a smaller downsize pump. The reason why the builder puts in the particular pump for your pool is because the builder thinks you need that total horsepower or the horsepower rated with a single speed pump to begin with, and they wouldn't normally put in the higher horsepower pump if you really didn't need it for your pool. So you don't want to go backwards in this equation because then you may have problems with flow, energy efficiency, and with, again, water features or even the spa jets not having the force that you used to have with your older pump. Again, you may not notice it right away as a problem, but it could develop into a problem. And so you just want to kind of match the horsepower or go above that total horsepower. Let me flip here and talk a little bit about large pools. And a lot of times, the builder will put in at least a 1.5 horsepower regular single speed pump when they build it. They may put in a 2 horsepower motor as well. The larger pools do need these larger pumps because they're going to move more water more rapidly in these pools. And a lot of these larger pools have water features, attached spas. There's a lot more water to move, and so you're going to need a larger horsepower pump to do this. In my service area, it's pretty Pentair dominated. So most of the pool pros here, if they have a 2 horsepower or 1.5 horsepower Pentair SuperFlo, they'll just put in a 3 total horsepower IntelliFlo and call it a day. And that's not a bad choice. It's pretty good. And it's, 2.7 or 3 horsepower pump is sufficient when you're replacing a 2 horsepower or 1.5 horsepower single speed pump. And that's a logical choice. And I don't think you would want to go with a 1.85 or even like a 2.2 total horsepower VS pump. Just go straight to the 3 horsepower. And this is total horsepower, by the way. So when you're running it at low RPMs, of course, it's going to modulate the speed. But when you do need the full 3400 or 3450 RPM, it's good to have it there and have it available with the larger horsepower pump. And I highly recommend that you go bigger with the larger pools. You don't want to go straight to, if you had a 1.5, going to a 1.65 or 1.85 wouldn't make a lot of sense. I would just go to the 3 horsepower if the pool is larger. When I say larger, I'm talking 20,000 gallons or more of water to move in that pool. Something that's like 20 feet by 40 feet in dimensions would be what I consider a large pool here in California. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. let me back up and talk again about the smaller pools again. So let's say you just have a 10,000 gallon pool and maybe it's older with 1.5-inch plumbing, or you maybe have an above ground pool that you want to put a VS pump on. I really like the Pentair SuperFlo VS pump. To me, that's a pump that lasts a long time, highly reliable, and it's got pretty good head for a smaller VS pump. The pump basket wet end is smaller, but I would use a SuperFlo VS all day long because I find it to be one of the most reliable smaller VS pumps. It's also dual voltage, so you can use it again if your pool has 230 or 115 volts, not a problem. It'll automatically modulate it. It has a really easy interface. The controller on back is super easy to use. And it's the same controller that's on the SuperFlo variable speed pump. And I'll make a little note here, and I would say that if you had a 1.5 horsepower SuperFlo and you wanted to go with a Pentair pump still because you like the Pentair family of brand of pumps, I would probably lean more towards the SuperFlo variable speed pump than the Pentair IntelliFlo, unless you need all the bells and whistles that is offered by that. It's a really good pump, and it's very comparable to the SuperFlo. It actually will fit right into, and I should touch on this as well, that I mentioned this in the other podcast when I was talking about the low-cost pumps on Amazon, that you would want to get a pump that matches your inlet and hopefully your outlet of your pool. And so if you have a Pentair SuperFlo or Pentair SuperFlo pump right now, getting a Pentair SuperFlo VS pump will fit right into where the old one is cut out. Same with the SuperFlo. If you have a Jandy Flow Pro, you would, of course, put the Jandy pump in. If you have a Hayward pump, you would go with the Hayward VS pump because it matches up really nicely in your equipment pad. And it's basically a plug and play kind of thing. If you have threaded unions, you can just disconnect the old pump, put the new one in there, and then you're set and ready to go. So I'm a big fan of ease and making things simple. And there's no need to go from a Hayward pump to a Pentair pump or from a Pentair pump to a Hayward pump. It makes really little sense to me. They're all about the same in quality and functionality. So just go, if you have a Pentair single speed pump, get a Pentair VS pump or get a pump that fits that Pentair pump. There's a few of those on the market now. You have the CircuPool VS pump. You have the new H2 Flow Nautilus, I should say. It's not Nautilus, it's Nautilus VS pump that fits directly in where you take the Pentair pump out. And you can actually go with the Jandy pump because Jandy has bases that you can put underneath there to raise them and lower them to match the Pentair pumps. But again, logically speaking, since I don't sell any pumps and I'm not someone who retails anything, it's safe for me to say to you, go with the same pump you have there now. Pentair, Hayward, Jandy, Waterway, whatever you have now, just replace it with that brand to make the installation very easy and simple. Because believe me, it's sometimes a real headache and a real pain matching up the plumbing with a different brand pump if it's not an exact match and it's something that's going to take time and effort and it's really unnecessary. I mean, if you want to change pump brands, go ahead. But again, I just think they're all pretty much like a level playing field. You have, Honda Accord, a Camry, and I don't know what's the other one, Ford Taurus. I guess they still make those. I don't know. What's becoming more popular also is to install a variable speed pump onto a water feature or a booster pump. And this is also smart because you save a lot of money if you have a water feature running on a VS pump. You don't really need that much pump for certain water features, but I would still say you want to match the pump that's there. So if you have a water feature pump and it's a 1 horsepower, I would say you can get away with a 1.5 total horsepower VS pump. If you have a water feature on a 1.5 horsepower, then definitely get in a 1.65 or 1.85 total horsepower. Would you need the 3 total horsepower for water feature? I don't think that would be particularly necessary. So just try to match that horsepower closer in that situation. Same with a booster pump. A lot of spas have like a 1.5 horsepower booster pump. If you're going to replace that, since there's a lot of rules now where you can't really replace a single speed motor with anything above 1 horsepower, I would just put a 1.5 or 1.65 total horsepower VS pump in there. And I wouldn't really recommend if you have a single speed pump right now, let's say you have a 1 horsepower Hayward super pump or something, I wouldn't recommend just getting the motor and putting a new motor on back single speed. I would definitely upgrade to a VS pump because of the energy savings and because you can modulate the RPMs or speed of that pump. So it makes it really convenient to operate that pump. And I like variable speed pumps over regular pumps, any day of the week. They also will last a lot longer. Something I didn't mention when I was talking too much about the cheap Amazon pumps. I did mention that, the name brand pumps last longer, but a variable speed pump like a Pentair Jandy or Hayward, they're built to last a very long time. It's kind of like if you drive your car 80 miles an hour everywhere you go, it's going to wear that engine out pretty quick. But with a variable speed pump, you're running it at 30 miles an hour, then 40 maybe, then 60 miles an hour, and you never run it at the full speed all the time. So I think this is where, of course, the longevity, plus they're all sealed and fan cooled now to make them last longer as well. And in my opinion, if you have a single speed pump where the motor has burned out, I wouldn't hesitate to go to a variable speed pump and kind of just go off this guideline that if you have a 1 horsepower, go with a 1.5 horsepower total horsepower VS pump. 2 horsepower, go with a 2.7 or 3 total horsepower, and just kind of match the horsepower that's on your pump with the variable speed pump that you're shopping for. And as far as energy efficiency, all these are Energy Star rated, and they all have different WEP numbers, or WEF numbers, something like that. This is how they rate the energy efficiency. Regardless of which one you get, either 1.5 or 1.65 or 1.85 or 2.7 or 3, they're all going to be highly energy efficient and save you a lot more money than running your single speed pump. But again, you don't want to buy something you don't need, so you don't want to overspend on a VS pump that's not going to really benefit you. And you want to get one, again, that matches as close as you can to your horsepower currently. And this is kind of how I shop them for customers. I make sure that it matches their horsepower, so they're not wasting money, and they're not getting an undersized one either by going down in total horsepower. And if you're looking for other podcasts, you can find those by going to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the podcast banner, there's an icon, a podcast icon, I should say, on the banner. Click on that. There'll be 1,900 podcasts for you to download and listen to. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by Hasa, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.